Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the She Knows Pro Football podcast. Once again, I'm Alice, aka the NFL Girl. And once again, I have my great friend Dominick from Fantasy Hot Read here with me. Dominick, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing not too bad. You know, the Saints won this weekend, which was good. They got a win on Thanksgiving. The Eagles look like hot garbage, and the Broncos were actually able to pull another one out, surprisingly.
Hey, I was just as surprised as anybody that the Broncos actually were able to pull out a win. So kudos for them. They're still a terrible team. So let's see what happens moving forward. Well, you guys, Thanksgiving was last week. There were some great Thanksgiving Day games, including that Cowboys losing, which was so wonderful. So let's get started on this week. We're up to week 14 now. And, well, you guys, I don't know about y'all, but I'm out of the playoff race. And I definitely feel like some of you guys might need to hear some good games and maybe get some good ideas of who to start this week based off of some of these games. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with our Thursday night matchup. We got the 6-6 Dallas Cowboys headed to Chicago to face the 6-6 Chicago Bears. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, the Cowboys haven't beat a team yet with a winning record or even a 500 record other than, week one. So that being said, they're not a very good team. But, of course, the Bears are a very bad team. And the Dallas offense is number one in the league right now, especially with their passing offense. But overall, they're also number one in the league. Elliott should have a good game here. I think Dak Prescott should have a pretty good game here as well, although it is outdoors in Chicago. We have to see what the weather's going to be like. But I do not trust Trubisky. I don't trust this Bears offense at all. And although I do think Allen Robinson could have a decent game here, it's not going to be enough. I've been disappointed with David Montgomery has been showing all year, and I do think that the Cowboys are actually going to get their first win over a decent team, or at least a 500 team this year.
You know what? Cowboys look terrible on Thanksgiving. That's probably not the outcome anyone expected. I don't think I predicted. Well, actually, I did predict that. But hey, it was the Bills. This is a little different. This is the Bears. This is the Bears at home. Bears defense has been a little bit more disappointing than a lot of people probably thought that they would be. I don't think anyone expected that the loss of Akeem Hicks would play that big of a role. You figured that fact that they still had Khalil Mack there would be able to save them. But again, the problem isn't necessarily that defense. It always falls back on that offense. I understand that Trubisky was able to have a pretty impressive win last week. He does have a great receiver, like you said, in Allen Robinson. Montgomery has looked really good these last couple weeks. I feel like Dallas really had such a big letdown, and questions really started to come up on whether or not this team is going to be able to save Jason Garrett's job. That's still not a guarantee. Now, that being said, if they have a good enough win here against the Bears playing in Chicago, they might be able to salvage their season and potentially save Jason Garrett's job. I expect good things out of Dak in this game. I expect good things out of Amari Cooper in this game. I really expect a big game out of Zeke. Let's see whether or not I'm correct, though. They kind of disappointed me a little last week, but again, like I said, that was against that Bills defense, and Chicago's defense hasn't been playing up to that same level. I definitely am going to take the Cowboys in this one. I really feel like this may be, like you said, their ability to show that they can beat a 500 and above team. This might be that opportunity. Next up, we got the 5-7 Carolina Panthers headed to Atlanta to face the 3-9 Falcons. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, the Panthers obviously just fired their coach today, Ron Rivera. He's taking that, he's got to take that riverboat down the river. Don't know what's going to be next for him. He might get a defensive coordinator position somewhere. I don't think he's going to get a head coaching job somewhere, but you never know. They always like to just rehash different old coaches again, so he may get something somewhere. With that being said, Carolina, they do have the best player in the league right now. Obviously, the best player in this game as well in Christian McCaffrey, but he didn't have a great game last week. He only had about 90 yards total last week. Kyle Allen has not been looking good the past couple weeks. They've lost 4 out of the last 5. They beat the Saints, but other than that, they've looked like crap the past couple weeks, especially last week losing to Washington at home as a 10-point favorite was just awful to see, and that obviously cost him his job. This week, I think Atlanta is actually playing better than their record. They're playing better in the second half than they are in the first half of the year. They were disappointing, obviously, against Tampa Bay 2 weeks ago. I didn't really expect them to win last week against the Saints, so I wasn't really too disappointed in that. They did put up some points, which is good to see. I think they're going to be able to put up points again here. We did see a couple years ago where Julio Jones had a monster game against Carolina where he had like 300 yards receiving. I don't think he's going to go for 300 if he even plays this week. He didn't play last week, but I do think that Atlanta is going to be able to win this one, especially being at home.
Carolina losing to the Redskins was unfriggin' believable. That's not one that I would have predicted. I was shocked at the level at which the Redskins defense was able to hold Christian McCaffrey. That was not something that I expected at all. I'm sad to see Ron Rivera lose his job. I don't know that it will make much of a difference, especially considering that they did it with so many games still left in the season. We'll see how that has an effect. I still think that there is a lot of potential in this team. He still has great receivers working with him. Kyle Allen, I mean, because he still had DJ Moore has, he has on and off games. He looked really good last week. It's just they didn't have enough to get it over the finish line. I expect good things out of him. Kyle Allen is not their future, but I still think he can get a couple more wins out of this season. We'll see how that plays out going forward. Atlanta, meanwhile, has had a disappointing season. They've looked great in their wins, but their losses have been disgusting. I don't know what exactly is going on. I understand that they haven't had a run game all season. I understand that that's what has played a big factor, but when you have two of the top receivers in the league, that's not good enough. And considering that Matt Ryan, was an MVP just a few seasons ago, there's no excuse for why this team is playing the way that it's playing. I understand that the defense hasn't played that well this year, but that this team should be doing a lot better than what it's doing. They should at least be at 500, and they're not. They've lost some close ones. They've got blown out a few times. This game, even though it's in Atlanta, and I'd like to see the Falcons to get to, by the end of the season, I'd like to see them get to 7-9. I don't think that they are, and I don't think that they're going to win this one. I think Carolina is going to try and rally, especially after having such a public loss of their head coach. I think that they're going to be able to get a win. I definitely am giving this one to the Panthers. Next up, we got the 10-2 Baltimore Ravens headed to Buffalo to face the 9-3 Bills. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, I like both of these teams. I really do like Josh Allen. I was never a big Lamar Jackson fan coming in, I'll admit that, but he's the MVP this year. I do think that the worst part of the Bills' defense right now and all season has been their run defense. They're 15th in the league in run defense. So I think they're going to be exploited in this game by not only Lamar Jackson, but also by Mark Ingram. I do think they're going to be able to run all over him here. I know it's in Buffalo, but I do have to go with Baltimore here. I can't really go with them. They're on an 8-game winning streak right now. You can't really go against them until they lose a game.
Bills defense has been hella impressive this year. I've been surprised in all the games that they've won. I've been surprised, even in their losses, I've been surprised at how close they've kept most of these games. This team has looked very, very solid when it comes to their defense. On offense, Josh Allen has really looked good. He's really been able to hook up with John Brown. That's been his most impressive target this season. Their run game has looked good. They're a very solid team all the way around. That being said, they are facing the 10-2 Ravens, who have beaten the top teams in the league. They have beaten the New England Patriots and the San Francisco 49ers. That's damn impressive when no one was expecting them to play at this level. Lamar Jackson has looked MVP level this season, and Mark Ingram has helped him in that backfield. Even in the times when Hollywood Brown hasn't been playing at the top level, either Lamar has been able to scramble and get the touchdowns himself, or he's had Willie Snead there. I'm telling you that this is a great, great team on both sides of the ball. Now, is their defense at the same level as the Bills? Probably not, but it's not that far behind. So as much as I would like to see the Bills be able to pull off the win, the Ravens are, like you said, are on an 8-game win streak, a very impressive win streak, beating some really, really tough teams. Absolutely think the Ravens are going to get the win in this game. Next up, we got the now not winless 1-11 Cincinnati Bengals headed to Cleveland to face the 5-7 Browns. Dominick, who you got?
I don't even know if we really need to talk a whole lot about this game. It's the battle for Ohio for sure, but, it's also the battle for the bottom, and it's just terrible. I know Cincinnati got the win last week. I think they're actually playing very well right now. It was good to see Andy Dalton get back in there. He never should have been benched in the first place. I am going to give this one to Cleveland. I do like Nick Chubb in this game a lot, as well as Kareem Hunt. Cincinnati is not good against the run. We'll see if Odell Beckham is actually able to do anything. I don't know if he will be or not, but Jarvis Landry is still there, so I think they're going to be able to do enough in this game to get it done. And to put it over top, the fact that they're in Cleveland, I think, gives them the major advantage here in this game.
So listen, I predicted that the Bengals would get one win this season, and I originally predicted that it would be against the Browns. Who knew that Christmas would come early, and they ended up getting their win last week. I was glad to see Andy Dalton back out there. I was glad to see him be able to get a win for them. I think that shows, even if they make the decision to move on from Dalton, that Dalton is still able to play at a high level and will, if nothing else, be a backup somewhere else. I'm hoping that he may still get a starter job somewhere. I don't know where, but at least he should be able to be someone's backup if Cincinnati decides to move on. That now, with the impressive win that he had last week, is now a question mark. So we'll see what happens there. As far as the Browns are concerned, this team has played inconsistent as hell. I did expect the Steelers to get the win last week to make up for that loss and butt kicking that they took, a few weeks ago that cost people their entire season in some cases. But that being said, I also expect them to have a comeback game because that's typically how they've been doing this season. Win one, lose one, win one, lose one. I expect them to be able to get the win in this one. I really like that 1-2 punch of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I didn't know, as I've said before, I didn't know that the Kareem Hunt coming in 9 weeks into the season would have that much of an impact for them, but he has made a hell of a difference in that run game to be able to play the two of them off of one another. And then, like I said, Kareem Hunt has a pass catching ability more so than Nick Chubb does. So even if OBJ doesn't have an impressive game, you've got Jarvis Landry, and like I said, you have Kareem Hunt with the ability of pass catching. Baker Mayfield in the games that he's won has looked great. Is he going to throw interceptions? Of course, that's just who he is. Will he throw an interception in this game? More than likely, but I still think that they're going to be able to get the win. The Battle of Ohio is definitely going to go to Cleveland. Next up, we got the 3-9 Washington Redskins headed to Green Bay to face the 9-3 Packers. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, these records are opposite, and these teams are going in opposite directions as well. I know Washington's been playing very good lately, especially under Bill Callahan. They won a couple weeks ago against Detroit. They won last week against Carolina. Green Bay is better than both of those teams, and this one's in Lambeau. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to light this team up. I think Aaron Jones is going to have a great day as well. I can see that Adrian Peterson may have a good game like he did last week where he had 99 yards. Darius Geis had a showing out last week as well where he had 129 and a touchdown. So they could have a good run game, and that's definitely what they want to do is run the ball here and slow down the game. But I still think even slowing down the game and wanting to run the ball, Green Bay is just going to have way too much here. Aaron Rodgers, to me, is the most talented quarterback to ever play the game. He may not be the best quarterback to ever play, but he's the most talented. And I think that it's going to show again here against the very bad Washington Redskins defense. And I think Green Bay is going to win this one by double digits.
Redskins looked really good in their win last week. It was a surprising win. I don't think anyone predicted that they would be able to pull that one out, especially considering they were playing the Panthers. And I really like Dwayne Haskins. I do think that if he gets a strong head coach in there, that he will be able to have a really good, productive future. Heads up, I actually want to see the Redskins get Ron Rivera. That's just my side note or whatever. I think that he would be able to develop Haskins possibly at the level of a Cam Newton. I don't know that for sure. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I could see him having the potential of doing. Dwayne Haskins has a good arm. His connection with McLaurin has been very impressive. I think that this team has some pieces in place that they can move forward with. That being said, they're headed to Green Bay. They're going to be playing in Lambeau Field. The Packers are playing stupid good right now. Aaron Rodgers has looked super good. Aaron Jones has been out back and forth. He had some health issues, but now he's healthy. And when he's healthy, he plays really, really good. Good to have seen Devontae Adams out there and seen the connection that he has with Aaron Rodgers. Think that this team is starting to click. They know it's heading towards the playoff time. They know that they've got to make a serious playoff push. Absolutely expect the Green Bay Packers to get this. Do not expect this to be a close game. Take the Packers at home. Next up, we got the 3-8-1 Detroit Lions headed to Minnesota to face the 8-4 Minnesota Vikings. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, this is a rematch of one of the highest score games of the year. What we saw before was, I think the final score was like 42-38 or something last time. I don't think it's going to be quite that high this time with Stafford probably not playing in this game. They don't really know who's going to play, whether it's going to be Blau, the savior from Thanksgiving who didn't win, or if it's going to be Driscoll again. We do like Marvin Jones in this game. He just seems to play very well against the Minnesota Vikings. Kenny Golladay could have a very good game in this one as well. Obviously, they don't have a running game. Dalvin Cook is injured right now. It doesn't look like it's too serious, though. He said he sat out the second half of last night's game because the 4 games coming up are much more important, so he wanted to make sure he was ready for those. So to me, that means that he is going to play in this game. Even if he doesn't, I like the run game here. As long as Thielen comes back, the pass game should be good as well. Kirk Cousins actually has been playing very good lately, and Minnesota is just a much better team here, and they're at home. Right now, they're favored by 13.5 points, not knowing who's going to be the quarterback for Detroit. Don't know if they're going to cover that or not, but I do think they're going to win by at least a touchdown in this one.
The Lions have a good receiver in Marvin Jones, and they have a great receiver in Kenny Golladay. It's just a matter of who is going to be the one throwing the ball to them. That's going to be the question mark, and whether or not whoever that is can be able to string some wins together through these last few weeks of the season. I do not expect that to come in this game. The Minnesota Vikings looked, I don't know what happened to them yesterday. That game was just, well, they were facing the Seahawks. Let's be honest, that's more of what it was than anything else. There was some really bad plays on that defense. Kirk Cousins looked really bad in a couple of plays. I don't expect them to play that same way. This is a division rival. This is a team that they know how to beat. Expect the Vikings to be able to pull out the win. I don't expect that same type of play out of Kirk Cousins this game. He's got everybody back healthy that he needs to have there. I expect a better showing for Dalvin Cook. So definitely giving this one to the Vikings. Just feel like the Lions, the question mark at quarterback is going to be an issue. I'm not saying that Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay won't still put up points if you have them on your fantasy team. If you do, go ahead and start them, but just expect that the team itself will not be able to get the win, especially there in Minnesota with this team trying to make a play going into the playoffs. Next up, we got the 10-2 San Francisco 49ers headed to New Orleans to face the 10-2 Saints. Dominic, who you got?
Well, yeah, as we know, I'm a Saints fan. They are favored by 3 here. This is definitely a very tough game. I think they're both evenly matched. We know that the 49ers want to run the ball, and the Saints have the third-ranked run defense in the league. We know that the Saints want to pass the ball, and the 49ers have the first-ranked pass defense in the league. So it's going to be a battle of strength on both sides of the ball here. I do think that the Saints' front seven on defense is going to be able to get to Jimmy Garoppolo, cause some more fumbles. He seems to be fumbling the ball quite a bit. I think they probably could be able to get an interception here as well late. I do think the 49ers are going to keep trying to run the ball, even though they're not going to be able to get a whole lot done, but they're going to have to do that to keep Garoppolo upright in this one. But I do think it's probably going to be a little bit lower scoring than a lot of people think, but I do think that the Saints are going to be able to win this one by probably less than a field goal.
The 49ers didn't expect to take an L last week, but the Ravens have been running roughshod over everyone, so I think that was coming. I really like what the 49ers have been able to do. It's mainly their defense that has really catapulted them and led them to so many wins this particular season. They have a pretty decent running game no matter who's starting there. I've seen Breida have good games, but mainly, like I said, it's been that defense that has kept them in these games this season. They're headed to New Orleans. New Orleans has a hella impressive offense more than anything. Their defense is great. Their defense has played damn good this year, but it's always going to be that offense behind Drew Brees, behind Alvin Kamara, behind Michael Thomas. This is a great, stout, strong offense. They've had a couple stumbles this season, but nothing, their biggest loss really being that Falcons game, mainly because of where the Falcons were at that time. I do not expect that to happen again this particular week. Again, these are two teams that were headed into playoff times and are really trying to finish far ahead of their division, with the 49ers actually not leading their division and the Saints obviously leading theirs. I really feel like the Saints are playing for that bye week, and that being said, these are the games that they need to go ahead and wrap up. So I really feel like it's going to be a close, tough, dirty match. It's mainly going to be a defensive battle, but I do expect the Saints to get the win. It's not going to be a blowout on either side. It's going to be a very close, tough battle. Like you said, may come down to just a field goal or a couple of points, but expect the Saints to get the win. They're at home. Next up, we got the 3-9 Miami Dolphins headed to New York to face the 4-8 Jets. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, the Jets looked just terrible last week against the Bengals. Obviously, we saw what the Dolphins did. The Dolphins didn't actually have a really good game last week. The Eagles really gave that game away. They just didn't have the stamina to go down to Florida. That seems to be an issue when teams from the North go down there, especially after it gets cold. They go down there in the warmth and they just don't have the stamina. They should have probably gone down there earlier and practiced down there instead of practicing up in Philadelphia, but they didn't do that. Ryan Fitzpatrick looked great last week. Devontae Parker looked amazing last week as well, 159 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was his best game of his career. They still have absolutely no run game, which against the Jets, they're not really going to need a run game. I do think that they're going to be able to pass the ball all over this Jets team. I think the Jets are going to show better this week than they did last week because they did lose last week and they are playing a division rival. They also lost to the Dolphins last time they played in Miami, so that's going to be a revenge factor as well. That being said, I just think that the Dolphins, as much as people thought they were tanking before, I think now they're really trying to play to win some games. So I do think that they're going to be able to go to Newark and pull this game out.
Listen, the Dolphins impressed me last week with that phenomenal trick play that they pulled off in the end zone. That shows me that Flores is really trying to pull out some wins this season. Everybody expected them to tank, and now all of a sudden it looks like that's not actually what they were trying to do. Yes, they traded everybody away and it kind of kept a core group of people there, but one of those core people that they've hung on to was Devontae Parker, and you really saw what a healthy Devontae Parker with a consistent Ryan Fitzpatrick can do last week. That looked so good. Again, like you said, they don't have a run game, but if Fitzpatrick with that arm could keep up that level of play like he did last week, this team could at least rattle off a couple more wins this season. The Jets, meanwhile, they looked terrible. I guess you got to kind of consider who they were playing. That being said, I want to see Sam Darnold get another win. I want to see these two teams split the season. Like you said, the Dolphins won the last matchup. These are two teams that don't have the best defenses. Let's say that. I expected both of their offenses to put up a good amount of points because of the fact that they lack consistent defenses, and it's going to come down to whoever has the ball last. In my case, I think it's going to be the Jets. Like you said, teams tend to go down to Miami and get in that heat where it's 85 degrees on a Sunday in freaking December, and people are not prepared for that. I also feel like the opposite is true. These Florida teams head up north and they hit that cold weather, and they are not prepared for being in 30, 40 degree weather on a Sunday. Really feel like the Jets are going to get the win. And yeah, I feel like the Jets are going to get the win, and it'll be kind of like I said, whoever has the ball last. I think it's going to be the Jets, and I think it should be by at least a touchdown. Next up, we got the 6-6 Indianapolis Colts headed to Tampa to face the 5-7 Buccaneers. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, the Buccaneers looked really good last week going up. Of course, it was against Jacksonville, but they still looked very good last week. They have the best wide receiver tandem in the league right now with Godwin and Mike Evans. Jameis Winston's very inconsistent. He's going to get you probably 3 or 4 interceptions, but he's probably going to get you 3 or 4 touchdowns as well. The Colts defense plays very good, but they play especially good at home in that dome where anybody can play good. Jacoby Brissett has not been playing as good as we hoped he would. He played good at the beginning of the year, but for the past 4 or 5 weeks, he has not looked good at all. I think that continues this week. Jonathan Williams really didn't do anything last week. We don't know if Marlon Mack's going to be back this week or not. It looks like it's right at the beginning of his timetable for a return. But I do think that going down to Tampa Bay, again, going down to a warm climate in Tampa Bay, I do think that Tampa is going to be able to pull this one out by maybe a field goal, maybe a touchdown.
So earlier in the season, I was one of those people that kind of jumped on Jacoby Brissett because I saw so much potential out of him, especially after Andrew Luck suddenly retired. And I did see a lot of good in him because I've seen what he could do 2 seasons ago when he was the starter. This particular season, we haven't seen that same level of play. In the games that they've won, he's looked pretty good, but in the games they've lost, he's looked atrocious. And I say that as someone that actually has Jacoby Brissett on her team. So I don't know what to expect out of them. Their run game hasn't really been consistent this season. Part of that has to do with health issues. I did see him show up a little bit last week. We'll see what happens. The loss of Eric Ebron is significant, and so we'll see how that really affects the Colts moving forward. I really think that that's going to be a big loss for them, more so than I think people realize. The Buccaneers, meanwhile, like you said, even though it's Jameis Winston, and even though Jameis Winston is going to throw interceptions, you just got to know that going in. That's who he is. He's going to throw at least 1 to 2 interceptions every single game. If you can get past that, he's going to throw you 2 to 3, potentially even as many as 4 touchdowns. You know why? Because he's got Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, 2 of the top wide receivers in the league, period. The run game, oh, good Lord. You never know who. Again, every single week, it seems like they go back and forth between Ronald Jones and Peyton Barber. I don't know why. I thought they were going to do it by committee, but then suddenly Peyton Barber scoring the touchdowns instead of Ronald Jones. So who knows what they're doing as far as their run game. As long as they have Godwin and Evans, that doesn't even matter. I really think that Tampa is going to have a very impressive win in this game. They know that they really aren't in playoff contention, but they don't want to have a god-awful season. And I believe that Bruce Arians is not going to allow them to. Just because there's so many question marks for me surrounding the Colts, I absolutely think Tampa is going to get the win. I just feel like Jameis Winston has, as long as Evans and Godwin are both healthy, he's going to have a great game, even if he throws picks. So definitely taking Tampa in this one. Next up, we got the 4-8 Denver Broncos headed to Houston to face the 8-4 Texans. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, the Broncos seem to be one of the luckiest and unluckiest teams of the year. They've lost a couple of close games, but they've also won a couple of games where they shouldn't have won, against Chicago and against Los Angeles last week. That being said, Houston has the better quarterback here. They have the better team here. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is the best player in the game. I do like Houston here at home, especially since they're trying to stay ahead of the suddenly surging Tennessee Titans team, and I think they're going to be able to do it. So I do like Houston here by about a touchdown.
So Denver decided that they were finally going to do what I thought wouldn't work in their best interest, which was go ahead and start the rookie. So Drew Lock got the start last week. And guess what? It worked out in their favor. They got the win. That being said, they are headed to Houston. They are facing the Texans. They are facing the Texans defense. Admittedly, that defense has been a little bit porous at times, in particular since J.J. Watt has been out. But they are good enough to face someone like Drew Lock. The Broncos have a good running game. I love what Philip Lindsay can do, but he can only do so much if don't have great receivers there, which, since they gave up Emmanuel Sanders, I understand Courtland Sutton has suddenly stepped up, but I just feel like that there's still too many things that the Broncos don't have right this season, and that defense has not played up to the level that people were expecting them to be able to play to this season. This team was supposed to be in the top 10 defenses. I doubt if they're in the top 15, top 20. They just haven't played well, and in their losses, they've looked atrocious. Admittedly, Drew Lock was able to put on a nice enough game to get the win against the Chargers, but again, consider that it's the Chargers, and the Chargers always find a way to lose. That's not going to be the Texans. The Texans, not only does Deshaun Watson have one of the top receivers in the league, their running game has been pretty decent this season, this year too. If it's not Carlos Hyde, it's been Duke Johnson. I really love what this team has been able to do. Even the loss of J.J. Watt hasn't stopped that defense from being able to step up and play well. The team is still 8-4, so I definitely expect the Texans to get the win. I expect them to do it in impressive fashion. Definitely taking the Texans in this game. And I actually, sad to say, as a Broncos fan, do not expect it to be close. Next up, we got the 4-8 Los Angeles Chargers headed to Jacksonville to face the 4-8 Jaguars. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, speaking about two teams that are just awful right now, the Chargers look like crap. Phillip Rivers has looked terrible this year. He may have to go at the end of this year. They may have to go to Tyrod Taylor for next year as they bring in a quarterback to try and shore up that for the future, that position. That being said, coming all the way across the country, I don't think it's going to be a good game for them. We know that Gardner Minshew has already been announced to be the starter for this game. I think that's better for Jacksonville. They need to see what they have in him to see if they want to move on from Nick Foles this offseason, if they can trade him. This means a good game for DJ Chark as well. I think it also means a good game for Leonard Fournette. This could be a game where if the Chargers lose, that Anthony Lynn also loses his job. I think he's done at the end of the year anyway, but he may get fired on Monday if they lose this game. And that being said, I do think they are going to lose this game, and I think that Jacksonville's going to be able to win it at home.
The Chargers, they're just, oh my God, every year with them. This team always finds ways to lose games, where other teams always manage to find a way to eke out wins. Chargers are never that team. Chargers somehow always manage to find a way to lose in spectacular fashion. And I was not expecting that loss last week, and yet here we are, they did lose. And in particular to who they lost to. My goodness. This team, I don't understand how. Philip Rivers still has an arm. He has Keenan Allen. In the run game, you've got Melvin Gordon and you've got Austin Eckler. And Austin Eckler is also a pass catcher. I don't understand how they're losing the way that they're losing. They still have a good defense. They should not be 4-8. And sadly, though, they are. They're headed to Jacksonville. They're facing the Jaguars. Like you said, they're coming across the country. Jaguars have announced that they're going to start Gardner Minshew. I don't know what that means for the future of Nick Foles. I do know that DJ Chark plays so much better with Minshew. I don't know why that's the case, but he just really does. Leonard Fournette in that backfield has looked really good this particular season. I would like to see the Chargers get the win. I would like to see them be able to save Anthony Lynn's job. I would like to see them be able to move forward at least another year with Philip Rivers so they can, so that they can bring in a rookie maybe this offseason that they can develop with Philip Rivers still there. I don't know that that's what's going to happen if they lose this week. And I honestly, with the Jaguars defense, I don't know how that they can win. That's the sad part when it comes to the Chargers. As many more weapons I feel like they have on that offense, they always manage to find a way to lose. And I really feel like that's what's going to happen this week as well. It may come down to the kicking game. It's usually the kicking game that loses it for them. I do definitely think the Jaguars are going to get the win. Sad as much as it hurts me to say that, because I hate rooting against the Chargers, even though I'm a Broncos fan. It's just because I don't want to see Anthony Lynn lose his job. But I definitely think the Jaguars are going to be able to get that win. Next up, we got the 7-5 Tennessee Titans headed to Oakland to face the 6-6 Raiders. Dominic, who you got?
Obviously, the Ravens are the hottest team in the NFL right now, but Tennessee might be right behind them, especially since Ryan Tannehill came in. Just imagine where they'd be now if they had actually started Tannehill. Like, it sounds like a lot of the people in the front office on the coaching staff wanted to start him before the year, and the owner said no. So they could be probably even 9-3 or something at this point if they had started him from the get-go of the season. Derrick Henry has looked amazing. He has over 300 rushing yards the past 2 weeks combined. The Raiders are actually a terrible team. I know they're 6-6, but they have one of the worst point differentials in the entire NFL. Despite that 6-6 record, they either win close or they lose big. That just seems to be the way it is. So they have a very bad point differential. They definitely play a lot better at home than they do on the road, which is good because they just lost by 31 on the road last week to Kansas City. Don't think they're going to lose that bad this week, but I do think they're going to lose by at least 2 touchdowns. I do think Tennessee's going to go into the black hole and stomp a mud hole.
The Titans, like you said, had they started the season with Ryan Tannehill instead of trying to see what they had in Marcus Mariota, maybe they would be a little bit further along. There's no way for us to know that for sure, but I know for one thing for sure, Mariota will not be back next season. Does that mean that they're going to move forward with Tannehill? I don't know. I don't know that they're not going to draft someone, but I know that Tannehill is definitely trying to propel this team into a playoff contention, and therefore they really need for this team to really step up, and this is going to be one of those games that they really need to win. And I say that because we're getting down to the last few games of the season, and the Raiders are, they're not in their division, but these are one of those 500 teams that either play really, really well or play really, really terrible. And if you get the right team on that particular day, you can really mud stomp them. So I would like to see the Titans be able to get that. But that being said, Raiders at home play a different level of ball. And like you said, Raiders either get the dog snot stomped out of them or they have these close, how the heck did they pull that off type of wins. I think at home, they're going to want to have one of those close type of wins. And I say that because I feel like, again, this is another team that's trying to make a play for the playoffs, and they're at 500. It is a possibility that they can still get into the playoffs. I mean, it might be by the skin of their teeth, but it's a possibility still at this point. Both of these teams are. So expect this to be a very tight, close matchup. And when it comes to those type of games, the Raiders typically can get a closer matchups than a little bit better than the Titans can. So I personally think that the Raiders are going to be able to pull this one off. I just feel like at home, they're going to play a different level of ball. They know they're down to the last few games there in Oakland. Definitely expect the Raiders to be able to pull off a win. Next up, we got the 8-4 Kansas City Chiefs headed to New England to face the 10-2 Patriots. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, this is a game of a great offense against an even better defense right now. Patrick Mahomes, everybody's anointed him as the chosen one, and he had a great year last year as the MVP. He hasn't been as good this year. Even last week when they put up 40 points, he only had 1 touchdown. He did have a rushing touchdown as well, but he had less than 200 yards passing, which means that their offense really did not do a whole lot of anything. Luckily, they did get some good defensive play last week against the Raiders, which is easy to pretty much do against the Raiders, especially on the road. They had a pick 6. That being said, I think that this week the pick 6 is going to come from the Patriots. I know the Patriots have looked bad. Even in their wins for the past month or so, they've looked bad. The Chiefs are going to be able to put up some points here. The Patriots probably are not going to be able to put up a lot of points. We know that the Chiefs lost to the Patriots last year in the AFC Championship game. They're mad about that. That was kind of revenge for the Patriots because they got stomped against the Chiefs earlier in the year, like 42-10, I believe, the last time it was in New England. It's going to be tough here, and this is probably the toughest game for me to call this week. But I'm going to go with the Patriots. I don't think they're going to lose 2 in a row. I think Belichick's going to have them really focus this week. Tom Brady's going to have them focus. And I think they're going to do just enough to shut down Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes. And I think they're going to be able to pull out a hard-fought victory here.
So this is one of those top-ranked offenses facing a top-ranked defense. And we know in the Super Bowl history, when a top-ranked offense faces a top-ranked defense, it goes to the defense, or at least it has in recent Super Bowl memory. So this is a preview potentially of AFC Championship matchup. I don't know for sure because, somebody has to get past the Ravens. That being said, the Chiefs have a high-powered offense. He's got great receivers there in Tyreek Hill. He's got a great tight end in Travis Kelce. Gurley, this when healthy, this is one of the top teams in the league, one of the top scoring offenses in the league. Definitely very impressive team, but they are headed to New England. And that never works out in most teams' favor. It hasn't always worked out in the Chiefs' favor. The Patriots, meanwhile, their defense in their losses has looked, oh my goodness, last week they just looked terrible. I don't know what happened to them, but in their wins, they have been damn impressive. That's the defense. The offense, meanwhile, has stuttered this particular season. They've relied heavily on that defense this season. So that being said, again, high-powered offense facing a high-powered defense always goes to the defense. Therefore, with Chiefs headed into New England, playing there in Gillette Stadium, I absolutely 1,000% am taking the Patriots in this game. I really feel like that defense is going to be ready to step up and get the win. They are not going to face 2 losses in a row. It's just not happening. Chiefs are going to have to, get a win next week, but it's definitely not going to be this week that they're going to get their next victory. Next up, we got the 7-5 Pittsburgh Steelers headed to Arizona to face the 3-8-1 Cardinals. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, Devlin Hodges looked pretty good last week with a connection to James Washington. We didn't see James Conner in the game, but Benny Snell looked good, as did Jalen Samuels. I do think that Arizona's defense is complete trash right now. Expect a big game out of Vance McDonald, as all tight ends against the Cardinals do. Kyler Murray is getting better and better and better as the year goes on, as is Christian Kirk. Larry Fitzgerald is the number 2 there. Looks like Kenyon Drake is the man there, at least for this year. Looks like David Johnson's more relegated to a backup role for right now, which is probably what he needs to be just to get his confidence back. With that said, I think Arizona played terrible last week against the Rams. That was kind of a scary game for them, with the Rams coming off that ugly loss they had the week before to Baltimore. I do think that the Steelers right now, if the season ended right now, they would be the 6th seed in the AFC and they would be the wild card. I think they're going to be able to go into Arizona and pull this one out again and keep that 6th seed going forward.
The future looks bright for Arizona, for the Cardinals, and specifically for Kyler Murray. I think that having Cliff Kingsbury there has been good for him. He has Christian Kirk. He has Larry Fitzgerald. The run game, whether it's going to be Kenyon Drake or David Johnson or both headed, into next season and everything, we'll see. There is so much potential in that team when it comes to their offense. The defense has so many things that they're going to need to address this offseason. I'm not expecting a lot more out of this team. Maybe possibly another win. I don't see 2, but at least 1 more win. It will not be this particular week, however, though. I expect the Steelers to be able to pull off the win. Duck Hodges has looked really impressive last week. He's got chemistry going there. He's got, James Washington has looked good. Whether or not James Conner is there, it doesn't matter. I don't know what the future holds as far as the Steelers are concerned. I don't expect Mason Rudolph to be back there next year. I do expect Ben Roethlisberger to come back healthy next year. I do expect that they'll finish out the season with Duck. And I think that Duck will at least be able to get a couple more wins. Will that be able to be enough to propel them into the playoffs as the 6th seed, like you're saying? That's absolutely a possibility. And particularly if they could have an impressive enough win this particular week, it could be the driving force that they need to give them the encouragement that they can win, even with an undrafted rookie quarterback. So I'm like you, I'm definitely going to take the Steelers in this matchup. Just feel like facing that Cardinals defense, which hasn't looked good this season, Duck is going to be able to get that W. Next up, we got the 10-2 Seattle Seahawks headed to Los Angeles to face the 7-5 Rams. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, another division game that's always close. We saw that when they played this game in Seattle, it came down to a field goal at the end. Could come down to a field goal at the end here as well. Being outdoors, I do think it's going to be tougher for both teams. Russell Wilson hasn't looked good the past couple weeks. Until yesterday, he looked really good in the game last night against Minnesota. I think he's going to look good again in this game against Los Angeles. Their run game, now that Rashad Penny's actually doing something for the first time in his career, as well as Chris Carson, they both look good. Chris Carson actually subbed himself out of the game last night just so Penny could get the touchdown. They're definitely in sync in this one. So I do think that they're going to be able to stay in the lead in this division. They're going to go to 11-2, and I think they're going to be able to beat the Rams and finally put the Rams out of the playoff hunt.
Jared Goff is, my goodness, whatever I thought he was going to be, he is not, and he probably never will be. Is he overpaid? Absolutely. For that matter, so is Ty Gurley. And that's sad because they've sunk so much money into the future of this team with those 2 players. And neither one has really played that well this particular season. Goff in their losses has looked atrocious. Hell, Goff in their wins hasn't necessarily looked that great. Ty Gurley has had just a handful of touchdowns this season. He hasn't looked that great. great. They're not playing him as much as they could be. Again, don't know what that is, if it's the knee or what it is that's keeping the numbers so low for him. I haven't seen as much out of Cooper Kupp, and I don't know if that's because I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's simply that because Goff just keeps throwing so many freaking interceptions, but his numbers haven't looked that impressive this season. And again, a lot of that falls on Goff, and a lot of that is falling on Sean McVay this season. I don't know what's going on with those Rams. This was supposed to be a team that was, after last season, was like the future of this is what, the type of coaching, this is the type of team that you need to have. And none of that has panned out. None of that is seeming to be the case. They picked up Jalen Ramsey, and even that hasn't been impressive. So I don't know. I'm not expecting a lot more out of this team for this season. I'm saying that they'll still potentially get at least a couple more wins. It absolutely will not be against the Seahawks. Seahawks look damn good in their win on Monday night. I expect them to be able to get a good win this particular week. Not only does Russell Wilson have the ability to scramble and get himself open and get touchdowns even, he has DK Metcalf there. He has Tyler Lockett there. He has a great running game with Chris Carson and Rashad Penny. This defense has really stepped up for them this season. This team is 10-2. And even in their 2 losses, haven't gotten super mollywopped. You could see the things that they needed to correct, and they corrected them the next week. So I am not expecting the Rams to be able to pull off some surprise type of win. Definitely think the Seahawks are going to get the win here and keep that impressive lead that they have in that division. Next up, we got the 2-10 New York Giants headed to Philly to face the 5-7 Eagles. Dominic, who you got?
Yeah, we were talking all over Twitter last week about wanting to flex the Baltimore-San Francisco game into Sunday night. I bet ESPN wishes they could flex out this Monday Night Football game. This is just a terrible game between 2 awful teams, and one of them might actually make the playoffs, which is scary enough. Alshon Jeffrey should have a good game here. Miles Sanders should have a really good game here, and so should Carson Wentz. This Giants defense is atrocious. They're terrible. Their secondary is bad. Their linebackers are bad. Their front 4 is bad. Saquon Barkley has been playing just not good at all this year, but he's the only person they really have. Darius Slayton is doing good. The Eagles' pass defense has been much better than they showed last week against Miami, so I don't expect them to be as bad this week as they were last week. That being said, I do think they're going to be able to win this game, especially because it's at home. They always play the Giants tough. Obviously, the Giants always play them tough as well because of the division, but I do think the Eagles are going to be able to get this win on Monday night, and it shouldn't be a close game. I'm guessing probably 10 points.
So the future of the Giants is a question mark. This is another team where it is predicted that it's potential that Ron Rivera can end up being the head coach there for next season. I don't know that for sure, but if that's the case, who is he going to have at quarterback? It's a potential that it's most likely that Eli's going to retire. That's a given. Do they see enough in Danny Dimes to be able to move forward with him? I haven't seen enough out of him for that to be the case. I expect them to try and draft a quarterback this offseason, just because I'm not seeing. Early on we saw that there was some potential in Daniel Jones, and we're not seeing that anymore. This team is 2-10. They're not progressing at all. I'm not expecting them to be able to get the win this week. Saquon can't do it all by himself, and when he doesn't have a quarterback that can consistently get the ball down the field, and when he doesn't have a defense that can stop opponents from scoring, and therefore is having to try and make up yardage and try and score all by his freaking self to salvage this team, it's not going to happen. And I feel bad for the kid. It's a terrible situation to be in. Hopefully next season will be a little bit better for them, but this season is a wash. The Eagles in their losses have looked god awful. I'm hoping that this week they will be able to play a lot better than they did last week, that they should not have taken an L at all last week, considering the level of players that they have there on that offense. We got Carson Wentz. You got healthy Alshon Jeffrey finally. I understand that you lost Deshaun Jackson, your deep ball threat, earlier this season, but you still have other potentials there. Like you said, Miles Sanders was able to step up, and I've seen enough out of him to know that that's potentially who that they need to stick with as far as the run game is concerned. Their defense has not looked the best this particular season. That's why they sit at 5-7, but they still sit in a terrible, terrible division, and still, even with a 5-7 record, still have the potential to win this terrible division. So that should tell you how bad the NFC East is. That being said, that would come if they can get this win this week, and they're at home in Philly. Absolutely 1000% think that they're going to get the win. May not be a blowout, but I do think that they are going to get the win, and they're going to do so on the arm of Carson Wentz. Well, that's all our matchups for this week. Dominic, give me a survivor pool pick for this week.
Yeah, if you haven't used them yet, I think you can for sure use Green Bay in this one against Washington. And if you want another one, I think you could probably use, I think Pittsburgh's playing very good right now. I think you can use them against Arizona.
Definitely take the Seahawks. They're facing the Rams, and the Rams have just not looked good, in particular on that defense. If you haven't used them yet, I know that seems kind of Captain Obvious on that one. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but I feel like you should take the Jets. I just feel like that they are going to make up for that L they took last week and get the win over the Dolphins. So take them if you haven't used them this season. And last up, Dominic, for those that are in or making the playoffs, give me one start and one sit in fantasy.
Yeah, for a start, I will say take Marvin Jones. As I said, we don't know who's going to be the quarterback in Detroit, but for some reason, Marvin Jones always plays good against Minnesota. If you want another one, if you need a running back, you could use Miles Sanders. I think he's going to have a good week, and I really like Mark Ingram this week as well against Buffalo. For somebody to sit, I really don't like the other running back in this game, and that would be Devin Singletary. As much as I like him, the Ravens are they're in the top 2 in the entire league in time of possession. That's because they run the ball a lot. They're going to hold this ball with Lamar Jackson running the ball, with Mark Ingram running the ball, maybe even Justice Hill, Gus Edwards. They're just going to run all over this Baltimore team. They're going to keep the ball for over 30 minutes here. They are going to score, which means that the Bills are going to have to use Allen's arm to stay in this game, which means it could be a good game for Allen, but that does not mean good things for Devin Singletary. So I think if you have better options, you should let Devin Singletary sit on your bench in this one.
That sounds like some really good advice. I wish I was in the playoffs to use it. Oh, well. Well, that's all the time we have, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you all again for listening. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at TheNFLGirl320. Dominic, where can they follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter at EnvisionFF.
You can read more of my thoughts on SheKnowsProFootball.com. Dominic, where can they read more of your work?
You can find my work right now at FantasyHotRead.com, as well as Rotoballer.com and Razzball.com.
That's all the time we have. Thank you again for listening. See you back here next week.